Okay, let's go.
He wants to jump
1,000 cars. Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
I don't think I'd attempt to try this stunt.
Or we owe this horsepower to Uncle Sam.
Too many cars.
Car. You know, roses would be.
Like I put my beer belly on it.
If you can't immediately tell somebody how many cars you have,
you'll really give those uppity yuppies something to think about.
Stay on the bar. Don't go off the bar with your Bronco.
1980 Volvo horns. What's right?
Yeah.
I want the man's coolant.
and he's like, "Oh, I thought it'd be small. It's for a small car." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's still an automatic transmission. They're never going to be light."
It's definitely going to have to crash.
Starting off with Brad buying another car.
That's the West.
Internet.
Is this a Nigerian oil print?
I also wish you drove a tan Camry.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that's a
horrible,
very
horrible podcast content.
very
Talking about a picture.
inside joke.
It loves to be driven hard.
Welcome to Auto Off Topic. Hello, Brad.
Good afternoon, Andrew. How are you today?
I'm great.
Excellent.
Remember when we used to do notes?
Notes?
Yeah. It's been a while. It's probably been like 150 episodes since we've done notes. I was just thinking because we were literally just talking about what we're going to go over because we haven't done notes.
Well, we also used to like do like whole plans of what we're going to talk about. We don't do that anymore. And we keep talking about an episode with a actual topic. We don't do that anymore.
It's tough. We're busy.
It is. It's tough because this is not a job. So if I was trying to make money doing this, maybe we'd put a little more effort into that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're just doing this to entertain anybody who wants to listen to it. If you want professionalism, go somewhere else. It's fine.
Absolutely.
And no shame. Like we're not trying to be extreme in our thought process here at all. Like it's just the way it works. We do things, we talk about them, and life goes on. We
turns
should
out
do.
You get. Sorry, yeah, I was gonna say. It turns out you get the same amount of return on this as just doing a free flowing episode as you do as putting as much work into a topic episode.
I disagree. I think we used to have a little bit more interaction and a little bit more. I don't know. I think it was something a little bit different. We did some topic episodes. We just haven't done.
We haven't done questions in a while. Maybe we'll have to do that.
We have not done questions in a long
ones.
time. Yeah. So look out for questions next episode. Boom. Oh, that was just 1 minute, 42 seconds. That means something later.
Okay.
Just a tease. Just teasing.
All right.
1 minute, 42.
Okay. I get it.
All
Took me a minute, but I get it.
All right. No problem.
All right. Let's see. I mean, we talked a lot about the events that you were going to go to in the last episode. So I know you went to them. You might as well recap those because
I did.
All the cool
I talked about
I
talked about going to Kyusha Club and then going to the collab. I didn't know I needed Ferrari X Mitsubishi.
Yeah,
but I did not go to Kyusha Club.
Oh, really?
Well, after this, it was the same day, same basic time, and after a long thought process and ultimately a long conversation with Naomi, where she talked sense into me and helped me realize that it was more my FOMO making me want to do both events than actual need and necessity. I decided to just go to the Ferrari X Mitsubishi event. Only because the time and the fact that they were a half hour away from each other, like distance-wise.
Okay.
Distance as time equals 1/2 hour in this case. So they both started at 8 a.m.
Fun fact, everywhere in Phoenix is a half hour away from each other. I don't know if that's true.
It's pretty damn close. Except for the Ferrari Mitsubishi event was more like 48 minutes away.
Okay.
But if I'd gone to Kyusha Club and then to IDR, which is that event, it would have been a half hour to Kyusha Club and then a half hour from Kyusha Club to there based on like where they were. So, but they both started at 8. The Italian Design and Racing IDR, the Ferrari place that I talked about a couple weeks ago, was holding the other event. and that also started at 8. That one ended a little bit later, so they had that one running till 1 or 2, and Koyosha Club, I think, ends at 11. Now, the reason the other one went so late was because they knew Koyosha Club was the same day, and they were anticipating people attempting to do both.
Ah.
I decided, again, after some conversation and some just thought process overall, that I would just go to the event at Italian Design and Racing. Mostly because it was being put on by friend of the show, Josh, from Adventure Driven Design. And through Josh, I've become friends with Michael Carpenter, who runs Italian Design and Racing. So I was like, you know what? I should go support the initial Cars and Coffee at IDR. They had presented this as a homologation car kind of meetup on the back of Kenjiro passing away last week. And because Josh is a big Mitsubishi nerd, much like most of us that are involved in this producing of this podcast, he wanted to do something, and he knew that there were enough Pajero, Montero people and Starion and Gallant and Colt people around to put together a little display of cars in dedication to Kenjiro. So Kenjiro over the years drove a Starion, a Lancer Colt, a Pajero, and a Pajero Evo, and a Gallant VR4, and we had one of each at this event. So that was kind of cool. That being said, we realized quickly that the advertising it as a homologation car event made people think that it was an exclusive event just for invited homologation cars.
Oh, oops.
So basically what happened was all of the Mitsubishi people showed up. Michael had the Ferraris displayed out front that he has in the shop. He rolled out. And there was one Renault Turbo 5.
Oh.
And a couple of cars kind of came and went during the day. But overall, that was about it. So we talked afterwards, and he wants to do a low-key Cars and Coffee event there because it's a cool spot. He's got some space. He wants to do kind of the vibes that like 4 Till 4 used to be, where it's just a very casual gathering of people coming and going. There's no there's no extra ulterior motive. It's just trying to curate it into something that is not a bunch of new BMWs, basically. It's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Or he's trying to do, I should say. So we'll see what happens. But with the conversation moving forward, where he's not going to advertise it as a homologation car special, he'd like to do themed events sometimes, but just make sure it's known that there's like a special parking area for this particular theme. And it's not the main attraction isn't the theme. So we'll see. Everything has to start somewhere, right? But after talking to Naomi about it, I decided to go to that one because, as she pointed out, like it's the first event they're doing. You know, it's your friends doing it. Let's do it. Koyosha Club doesn't need any support. So they have plenty of support already. And I guess, much like last time, it was chock full of cars. So the pictures I saw, I do still have a little bit of that FOMO. There was some really neat stuff there, but overall, I'm happy with my choice to have gone to the IDR event, and will support them moving forward. You know, I've never.
Do they do it every month?
Which one?
At Koyosha Club?
Koyosha Club does not have a set schedule. It's not every month. There's only been.
Oh, okay.
The last one was 2 or 3 months ago. Maybe it's December.
So that's even cooler.
The no set schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there probably is a set schedule. I just don't know what it is. It doesn't seem very set. So
yeah, but it's not like once a month. So it's even that feels
exactly
even cooler. You know,
there's 4 or 5 a year, I'd say, which is a pretty good number. The anticipation of that event is good. It also made it hard to skip it because there's only 4 or 5 a year, and I've missed one, I think, last year. So it is what it is. I'll go to the next one and I'll go from there. And Michael and Josh won't schedule their next Cars and Coffee on the same day, as that was an error in planning on their part. So it is what it is. Curious Club's good. It's definitely a neat event. Hopefully you can be here for one of them sometime because you'll be blown away. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, moving forward, we'll see what happens with the IDR event. And I have high hopes for that. It's interesting being involved in the Ferrari community there, because that's way outside of my norm. You know, you and I are both pretty hardcore on no super expensive cars. We like the everyman car.
Yeah.
But I think the cool thing about this particular event is that everybody who goes there so far that I've been interacting with, including those who run the shop, are very low key when it comes to being expensive car people. They're into Ferraris, but they're into older Ferraris. So, and it's that era of Ferrari that's in between the multi-million-dollar 60s stuff and the current hypercar flavor of the month stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to say is they're the equivalent of our kind of car person, just with Ferraris. You know, they kind of like the forgotten 308s and 328s and other Italian cars, like there's a Lancia Delta Integrale that belongs to David that's there all the time, and non-Italian stuff. There's an Alpine 310 that's there. Like there's some, it's higher end, but it's also not, it's not fake, I guess. I guess that's my biggest problem with a lot of the modern hypercar stuff, is that it's just fake money, show off, look at me, where this is true passion for the kind of, it's hard to say unloved and Ferrari in the same sentence, but kind of the forgotten stuff that people don't really pay much attention to now unless you're a true enthusiast. So I think that's where the connect is there. Plus the shop is all hands on. They build everything in-house. They work on everything in-house. They have multiple 3D printers. They 3D print metal parts. Like they do a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yep.
And it's all very DIY feeling. And I think that's kind of what makes it work. So I definitely need to get you out there next time you're here, because you will maybe help me explain the vibe of why we're rubbing elbows with Ferrari people when we're pretty anti that crowd usually. So yeah, it's a good time. But yeah, that's the event I went to, Andrew.
Cool.
I talked a big game about a bunch of events, but only went to that one.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I haven't done any events because
there haven't been any.
it's still, well, winter's still holding on. So
yeah. Unfortunately, it looks like there's a donut meet coming up there next weekend.
Yeah, but on off-topic weather, we're getting a nor'easter right now as we're recording,
Oh,
and it is dumping snow up north. So I was like,
Oh.
you know what? One last family ski trip.
Yeah.
'Cause
Okay. That's
it's
also
April.
cool. Oh,
Which I
actually,
said 2 weeks ago, I was like, this is the last day I'm going skiing because they got snow. And then 2 weeks before that, I was like, this is definitely the last day I'm going skiing because it's melting.
and then New England.
Yeah.
New England did New England things. Speaking of donut meets, actually, while I was at said Ferrari event,
Mhm.
I was walking around and I noticed two people in t-shirts that were quite familiar to me. One of them was wearing a Revival Motoring shirt, and the other was wearing a Staggered staff car show t-shirt. And I was like, huh, that looks like a couple of New Englanders. So I went over to them, and it turns out that the gentleman wearing the Staggered t-shirt is actually the photographer for Lock City.
Oh.
So yeah, it was him and his, I'm going to say it was his girlfriend, but I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming. So her name was, I think, Serena, Andy and Serena. So super cool people. They're good friends with Josh from Revival, who we know very well, and made sure that showed them some told them about some things that were happening in the area. Unfortunately, they were leaving the next day. But in the world of small worlds, they are friends with Josh Mead from Adventure Driven Design. So they happen to be in town because Serena's dad winters in Phoenix, and they were visiting him, and they're also friends with Josh. So Josh invited them over. So it was kind of a neat little thing there. So Andy's a good follow. His name is Andy_Lenz, Lennz. He's, like I said, a photographer at Lock City Drift. So him and Serena, whose Instagram name I think is Hey It's Me Again. Cool people, and it was neat talking to a couple of New Englanders, and just obviously talked about the weather. And I was like, yeah, go over and look at that car. There's a Revival sticker on the window as well. So she's like, no way. So small world in the car community, as keeps being proven over and over again, right? So
yes.
Anyway, yeah, that's the plug for Revival again today, guys. You're welcome. So not that they need a plug from us, but anyway, yeah, that was the car event stuff I did this weekend. And then it was also Easter Sunday this weekend. And I did a car thing then that we'll talk about at Project Car Time. And yeah, that's it.
Well, we might as well talk about project cars.
Project cars. You want to talk about my project cars, your project cars, or what?
Start with we can do yours.
Okay.
And then mine.
So everybody's excited for yours because you haven't done anything in a long
If you're
time.
in the Discord, and
if you're in Discord, you already know. You also already know why I was all excited when it was 1 minute 42 seconds into the podcast.
So again, come join the Discord.
Yeah, good times. My project car story is annoying. So do you remember, Andrew? I'm sure you do because you made sure to make fun of me for it back then, and you will this time as well, I'm sure. When I overheated in the Colt driving home from work one night?
Yeah?
Yeah, well, that was about 2 years ago. And this seems to be about the time span where this happens every 2 years or so. I seem to overheat in the Colt.
I don't know. I don't know why it does it.
I don't know why. I am at my wit's end about it. So when it first started becoming a problem was when I first bought the car. And that was, I think I determined that's been 10 years.
It had to be around 2014 because
it's 9 or 10 years.
I had moved into my house and I had sold you back the Mirage because I didn't need two cars at the time. And then at some point the Mirage was wrecked and then you bought the Colt. So yeah, it's been 10 years.
Yeah, something like that. So it had been overheating then. And we kind of figured that the temperature gauge was kind of wonky.
Yeah.
Because we would use the infrared thermometer to put the temperature, I guess, probe on the upper radiator hose, the thermostat housing, the lower hose, and never got a reading anywhere north of 190, even when the gauge was pretty much pegged. So when I drive the car, I don't generally worry about the overheating when the gauge is anywhere from like the bottom of the red to in the middle seems to be the operating range. Maybe that's a mistake on my part, but every now and again, it seems to be about every 2 years, it'll creep up to the bottom of the red and then go up into the red and then go above the red. And that's when I know I'm in trouble. So usually if it gets up there, I can pull off the highway because it also only does this at highway speed usually. Usually if it starts getting up there, I can pull off the highway and run it down, 45 miles an hour in fourth gear. It's about 2,400, 2,300 RPM. And the temperature will come down. It's on the highway where it's only a 4-speed, so it's tacking out, 5,000 RPM or so at highway speed that it starts to get warm. So last night I was driving the car because it's the only car not blocked in by cars that don't run currently. Not on my fault this time. Still stay tuned. It's the only car not blocked in by cars that don't run currently. And, well, not true. I guess I could take the Cressida, but I didn't. Anyway, it's the only car that I was going to take to this downtown restaurant where I was meeting a couple of friends for the planning meeting of our rally event coming up in the fall. So it's about, 20 miles away, mostly highway to get there. And I was going on the highway and I saw the gauge going up. It wasn't hot ambient temperature wise. It was probably 65 degrees out last night. It was a beautiful night, windows down, whole nine. And I started going up. I'm like, all right, I'll just get off a few exits ahead of where I'm going because Phoenix Metro is a grid. So you can get off the highway wherever and still get to your destination. So I got off on Northern Ave, which is about, I'd say, 6 miles north of where I was trying to head to. And then I just went surface streets the rest of the way. So I made it to within a mile of my destination. And the temperature had not gone down at all. It was still up in that zone where I'm nervous about it. And I saw steam coming up under the hood. And I went, well, I got to pull over because I don't want to launch the motor, obviously. So thankfully, I happened to pull into a Walgreens right there, opened the hood, and it was boiling over from the overflow bottle, as it always does. So annoyingly, I went to the back of the car, opened the trunk, grabbed a rag. The radiator cap has a pressure relief valve on it, which just pressure releases out the tube and then into the overflow bottle. And then since it was already overflowing, it continued to overflow. So I just released that valve so it would let the pressure out, stuffed the rag in there to keep the thing open, walked inside to Walgreens and bought a gallon of water, figuring I'll need that to put in the system to get anywhere I need to go afterwards. Also, that would give me enough time for the pressure to have gone down enough that I'd open the cap and hopefully it cooled off enough. So yeah, I did that. I came back out, put the water in it, drove the final mile to the restaurant we were meeting at. Didn't worry about it too much. Went to go home. Started the car. Temperature gauge went to normal. Started driving away. It started to go up pretty high. And I was like, oh, this is annoying. It's not, I'm never going to make it home at this rate. And then there may have been an air bubble. Popped down. Went back to normal. I was like, great. Jumped on the highway. Made it almost all the way home. I was on the exit to where I live. And it started getting a little bit warm. I was like, well, I just want to get to within, a block of my house so I can, at worst case, push it home the final block. And I got to my street and it started steaming again. And I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening now. So did it twice in one evening. So that's usually once it boils over and cools off and you put fresh water in it, it's fine. But not this time. So I don't know what's wrong with it.
You said on the Discord the coolant was all brown.
Oh, it was super brown.
It's got to be like we thought. Like it must just be corrosion in there, and it just keeps coming loose every once in a while.
And just blocking.
Driving the vibrations.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it just happens to be like every 2 years. I guess like flush it again.
Yeah, I'm going to flush it again. I was also thinking back to the Cressida. Remember I used to have the same issue with the Cressida and it showed no other signs of a bad head gasket other than that. And it turned out the head gasket was bad and that was causing the overheating.
Yeah, I mean, once it overheats, the head could be a little warped. I don't know. But
with the Cressida, it was the only sign of the bad head gasket was the overheating. And nobody could figure out why it was always overheating. And it was because it had a bad head gasket.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
but the coolant coming out brown.
There's clearly rust in there. And every time I clean it, I flush it with that Prestone flush kit. I clean it until it's clear. Like it comes out like you'd almost want to drink it. Obviously you wouldn't. You almost want to, it's clear enough that you think you could drink it.
Are you just using straight water in the car?
No, I never use straight water. I always use coolant.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I know better.
No, I wonder if there's any other product for old cars that you could add to water or coolant that's just extra corrosion preventative?
I don't know. Maybe. I was considering maybe this time looping the heater core just to see if it doesn't turn the coolant brown. Maybe it's in there, but usually that wouldn't be the issue because usually the rust is inside the engine itself because it's rust.
Yeah, and just like something maybe flakes off and like messes with the water pump. I don't know.
That's the third water pump I put in the car too. So
Yeah.
it's not that because I kept thinking the water pump was bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like it had a bad impeller wheel or something or a
Yeah,
weird design.
the good news is
Cavitate.
I can
That-
do a water pump and timing belt in that car in like 30 minutes now. So
yeah,
good.
it's just gotta be like something just keeps coming loose. I don't know.
It's incredibly frustrating. And I think that what I'm also going to do this time, I'm going to add an auxiliary temperature gauge. Just to
Yeah, we never did that.
yeah, just to get rid of the unknown factor of the OEM gauge that might be causing problems. So
You can get
There's
the one that you just cut into the radiator hose if that's the simplest way to do it. Maybe they have
Well, I
the
was gonna-
adapters that.
I was going to run one that just is a probe inside the radiator. That's what I was looking
Yeah,
at.
you can do that as well.
Yeah, it seemed to be the simplest way. I can run it right across. There's a hole, obviously, that we modified a little bit to run the wiring for the driving lights, and I did for the tack. And there's enough space through that grommet to run out of the line for that. So it wouldn't take me too long to install that. And I use a similar temp probe in the Cressida, and it works great. That's what controls my fans. It's just a wire probe that goes in the radiator fins.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's probably the simplest way to do it. So that's probably what I'll do. But yeah, I want to run an auxiliary gauge just to kind of get rid of that final little question of what the actual water temperature is. That might help in the whole diagnostic of everything. Also, I'm excited because I've had a problem with a couple of connectors under the hood of that car for a long time because they're just old and brittle, and I had a hard time finding them. I found a kit actually watching, what's his name? The Hot Rod channel guy, Mike Finnegan from the Roadkill Show.
Yeah.
He does his own YouTube channel now, and he does some neat stuff on there. But recently he did a Datsun 510, and he had a breakdown in the car, and a dude who's into Datsun showed up to help him, and he had this kit that was entirely comprised of Japanese 70s connectors. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because they're very different than the American car connectors of the time. So I looked online and found that the whole kit's like $30, and it has the connectors that are bad under the hood of my car. So remember, probably 10 years ago, we zip tied the connector on the back of the alternator. Not 10 years ago, but that was 2019. It's still zip tied. Yeah, not 10 years ago. It's 6 years ago, Andrew. No, wait,
10 years ago.
5 years ago, 2019. Anyway, we zip tied the connector on the back of the alternator. It's still zip tied. So
Yes.
because I couldn't find the correct adapter or the correct connector for that alternator. So I now have the correct connector, so I can actually fix those wiring things permanently. It's a super cool kit. It was only like $30. It's on Amazon, and it has, I don't know, something like 150 connectors of all the common Japanese style 70s connectors at the time. It's marketed to Datsun people, but it's the same connectors and everything then. So the Toyota connectors are all the same, Datsun ones, the Mitsubishi ones. So super cool set. So I'm excited to kind of repair some more of the wiring under the hood too. So anyway, that's my project car update.
Yeah, so the weather was nice. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get the Galant out because I want to use it more. So this was Easter Sunday. I got it out, backed it out of the garage. It started up, it was running pretty good. Then it was like running a little rough. I'm like, well, gas has been in there for like a year. It says it's had 3/4 of a tank. I was like, all right, that's not bad. So I took it around the block and it ran all right. Pretty smooth. I went to put gas in it. It only took 2 gallons, so apparently gas gauge is off. And and it doesn't even show full. It's weird.
Huh.
Maybe I gotta play with it a little bit or something. But anyway, I let it sit, and then I went to put it away, and this is like 2 hours later. It was just sitting in my driveway. Oh, the other thing, like the idle problem I was having, it's idling correctly now. It also is not running hot. I think the coolant temp sensor for the ECU, the connector was loose because it was just too like, what do I want to call it? It's supposed to be an actual connector, like a plug, but they break really easily, and you can just replace them with just the slide-on terminals.
Okay.
The wire ends, which were apparently fitting a little bit loose. And a while ago, I got a replacement connector with a pigtail and put it in, but I didn't start up the car or use it because I think I did it in like the middle of the winter or something. I don't remember. It's that picture I have with the cat was under the hood with me.
Yes. Yeah.
And apparently that was like a little bit loose, kind of throwing off the temperature reading, because now the car like starts up and actually goes to the correct idle pretty fast for the temperature. So
Okay.
That's good. But I went to pull it back in the garage, and it's acting like it's running on like it won't rev. Like it either feels like an injector is missing, or a cylinder's not firing, or maybe it just has bad fuel in it.
I don't
I'm
know.
not
Less
sure.
than a year doesn't seem like. Usually it's 2 years.
Yeah, and I don't know. The Talon is usually fine all the time. So I don't know. It could be like a clogged injector. They are original 450 injectors. I don't remember ever having them cleaned. I do have a set of upgraded injectors I may have talked about getting that I wanted to put in there anyways, and I had some fuel system changes I wanted to make, but it's sitting next to me on my desk here. I charged up my laptop so I can use the ECM link when the weather gets better again, and I can have the garage door open. It's not a nor'easter. I'll throw ECM link on there and see if it's still acting weird, not wanting to rev, so I can at least get a data log. And within ECM link, you can also go in for diagnosis purposes and like turn off injectors, so I can see if like turning off any of the injectors changes anything. If it, if you do like cylinder 1 and it runs even worse, and then you do cylinder 2 and it runs worse, but then you do cylinder 3 and it doesn't change, well, maybe that one's not working.
Right.
So
Yeah, the method of
yeah,
one at a time.
and I can at least like, you can see like what the injector pulses are and like the ignition timing and all that stuff when it's acting up like that, because it doesn't give you any check engine lights because it's early OBD. So at least be able to like look at things.
So it has a check engine light, just not for that.
It
particular-
does, but it's for some reason, even though it's running rough, it's not triggering a check engine light. It's not sensitive enough to trigger one. Like it's not a misfire, even though it feels like a misfire.
Basically, that light comes on for misfire or knock, and that's about it, right?
Yeah, or something else like
Overheat.
it's weird. So, I'm better off just running ECM link and just watching the log and seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we were talking about how poorly marketed cars are, because we did a Craig Don't Tell Me
We did.
last week. And maybe, I don't even remember, somebody pointed this out. I think it was our listener, Scott, pointed this out, the stylist guy, that I said something about, I'll just wait for a Volvo 142.
No, it was actually not him. It was Miles, Judge Mills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he pointed it out. That you manifested something by saying that out loud.
Yeah. So for like the better part, I think from at least, let's say that like my first car was a Volvo 740, I had a 240 at one point. They're always boring, automatic, slow cars. My parents had a lot of cool Volvos when I was younger. They had a 240 turbo, coupe 242 turbo. When I was a kid, there's a picture of me like Marco's age, like pretending to drive it. My mom had an 850 GLT, so I was kind of like
grandfather
Volvos,
had
but
a
just
wagon too, didn't he?
no.
Somebody had a wagon. Your dad?
No, his 740 was my. Oh, yeah, my dad had a wagon, a couple
So
wagons.
there was an
company cars.
orange 240 wagon. I remember.
That was my mom's car
It was your mom's car. Okay.
in
Maybe somebody
the
had one.
90s. It was a 76.
Okay.
So, which I didn't realize. Now thinking back, that learning some more history about Volvos, that was like the second year of the 240, which is crazy.
that's a cool car. The round headlight still and
Yeah.
very neat car.
So I always liked Volvos. It just like, but ended up in Japanese stuff.
Yeah, but you've always been Volvo adjacent because
Yeah.
your first RC car was a Volvo bodied car. You've always bought the Volvo model cars. You've had Volvo diecast cars. Like you've always been a Volvo person tangentially.
Probably because they're like an outsider type car, like a Mitsubishi.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I only had a Saab because I fell into it, but I would have probably preferred to have had a Volvo. And I'm also obsessed with Volvos, but I feel bad wanting to buy a Volvo because I feel like we need to have some difference in our cars to keep things interesting for the podcast. But
yeah. So I've been looking for an older Volvo, probably at least since like 2019, because I wanted something that was older. I've been talking about this. I wanted a metal bumper or chrome bumper car.
right.
Something that's more like not quite classic, more like vintage, I like to call it.
Something along the lines of my Blue Colt.
Yeah, because the stuff I have is all urethane bumpers, and they are technically now classic cars, but they're more like retro cars. Like they're, 80s, 90s.
And you've owned them since they were just 10-year-old used cars.
Yeah. And I've never been able to. I mean, I could totally go to a cruise night with them. It's just like, I don't know.
It feels funny.
It bothers me, and I shouldn't let it bother me that people don't like those cars at cruise nights. I should not give an F and just go, but I do anyways. I know we have other listeners that don't, and they just show up with whatever they have, and they don't care, and that's cool. But I don't know.
We're a product of our age group because let's listen, and this is not an aside to either of our parents. I don't say our parents did this to us, but people around us were like, only old cars are cool to go to a car show. You can't go to a car show with a new car. So I still have some of that thought process in my head. And I hate going to a car show and seeing new Camaros and Challengers and Mustangs and whatever other new cars are out there because I can just go to a dealership and look at those. I don't want to see them at a car show. But I have always thought that once something crosses the 15 to 20 year line, it's old car. If it's interesting, it's interesting. So,
yeah. But anyway, I was looking for something along the lines of that. I really like the 3-box sedan style. I do like 240s, but they feel big. And I've owned one. They are a big car. The coupes are really cool. You can get a turbo one. That's super cool. But again, they have big urethane impact bumpers.
Yep.
Not super svelte, right?
Right.
So the generation before is a Volvo 140. So I've been looking for a Volvo 140, specifically a 142, which is a two-door.
Which is, of
So
course,
when
the
Volvos,
hardest of all to find.
So the Volvos, the way they do their numbers, it's the series is 140. The sub thing, the way people refer to them, is a 142 is a two-door, 144 is a sedan, and a 145 would be a wagon.
Yeah. So apparently it's a one, technically it's a 100 series. And then it's a 104, which means 4-cylinder, and then door count, because it's also a 1.6 series as well as a 1.64.
Oh, so you even went down the rabbit hole even more than me.
I might have a little bit. So I was trying to figure out, because there's two different noses on that body style Volvo, and one has like this London cab-esque grille, and the other one has the normal looking grille all the way across. And it turns out that the ones with the London cab-esque grille are inline 6 powered cars. Those are 1.64s.
Yeah, those
know.
are apparently supposed to be more of a luxury car at the time.
Yep,
But
for sure.
Anyway, out of nowhere, on Friday of last week, you sent me a posting for a 142 that was in Phoenix. I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
Oh, okay. I think it's on. So I had you go look at it.
On
Very
Easter
nicely.
Sunday.
Went and looked at it.
Yeah. Thank
the guy
Naomi
was
also, because I had to leave mid cleaning the house for Easter Sunday dinner.
so the guy was only like 10 minutes from you.
So I didn't know exactly where it was. I knew it was in Phoenix somewhere, and as you stated earlier, that meant it was within a half hour. So
Yes.
I messaged him anyway, and it turned out he was about 11 miles away, about 15 minutes.
But the guy owns VTO wheels.
Correct. Yeah.
Weird.
So he sent me the address of where the car was after we'd been talking for a little bit back and forth about it, and I plugged the address into Google, and it showed an image. The Google Maps image was the VTO Wheels showroom / warehouse. And I was like, huh, I know those guys. Like, I don't know them, but I know of their product. I've actually talked to them many years ago, I think at Carlisle or somewhere, about wheels. But they make replica wheels of period 60s, 70s race car wheels. Like the Libras on my Colt, they make a version of those. They make an 8-spoke. They make another 4-spoke style wheel. They make a few different retro 60s, 70s style race car wheels for street cars. They're huge in like the MG and Triumph world.
Yeah. And it looks like maybe he had this car to use as like a fitment car.
No. Him
No?
and his father restore cars on the side out back. And they had bought a bunch of cars at the same time, and then wound up selling a bunch of cars because they picked up a E-Type and a Mini Cooper, original Mini Cooper. And they decided to go a little bit deeper into those restorations than they normally do, I guess. So they were unloading a few cars. If I had gone and looked at this car one day earlier, there'd be 2 new projects in my house, because they were also selling a 75 Celica for a very good price. So
that's the other thing. This thing was posted like for like $3,000.
Yep.
And I was like, that seems really cheap, because I've been looking around and they are priced pretty high. And
yeah,
I even looked at one town over here. I may have talked about it on the podcast, in Beverly, and I think it was a sedan or it was a coupe.
no, it was a
I
2-door.
don't remember now.
I'm pretty
it was
sure,
an
I
auto.
don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's a 2-door, but doesn't matter.
I kind of blocked it out because I was pretty annoyed. Because the same thing happened, right? I went to look at this car in Beverly, and I showed up, and somebody else was already there. And I was like, okay, this is weird.
Yep.
If you made an appointment, like, why is there 2 people here? But I guess the other guy showed up early or something, but whatever. And the car was a total basket case for like $1,500. Like, definitely did not run, had 0 paperwork,
Very rusted.
had rot holes all over it. I'm like, no, I'm all good. This is not worth my time.
No.
So I was like, I'll just wait. And I'm not in a hurry. I'll just wait for the right one. And I think I waited, and I think we found a good one. I think it's the right one.
It's not a perfect car by any means.
No, I didn't want a perfect car.
But like you said, they trade for so much money now. I was looking at cars that have sold on Bring a Trailer or public sales, and a driving running project, they seem to be around like $7,500.
Yes.
And for like a really decent like turnkey ready to use car, they're approaching $20,000. 15 to 20 grand
like
for
full
a lot of them.
resto. Yeah,
Not even full resto, just like a decent driver. Like, they're going for a lot of money. It doesn't make much sense. So
yeah, and And I had a couple of people, and I appreciate that they're looking out for me. They sent me some, but they were like put together projects, like sold as a rolling car with a bunch of parts for like $4 or $5 grand.
Yep. Or that
Which
one
is
particular
crazy.
one, that white one was $8 grand that was still needed
Yes.
to put together. I mean, granted, it
Yeah.
had a lot of cool parts, but
It
it
did.
was $8,000 for a not built car. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot for a
So
car to put together. So
Yep.
this one in the pictures looked really complete.
it is
The
that.
paint looked decent.
It's, it's decent minus.
Yeah.
it's
So you've
presentable.
actually looked at it.
Yeah. It's percent.
So anyway, I told you, yeah, please try to buy the car.
Yep.
And I guess the other guy couldn't buy it or something.
So I went down on Easter Sunday, which is not a good day to buy a car because everybody's busy. It was also pouring rain, which is also bad to buy a car. I would recommend you don't buy a car in the rain, but I also knew that at this price point, this car wouldn't last long. So I wanted to look at it. I figured if I had any questions about what it looked like in the rain, what it would look like dry, I could go back the next day and, kind of not commit to it that day. But much like you said, yeah, he scheduled another person for the same time as me. So I rolled up. I was there first. It was not at his house. It was at his business, and it was Easter Sunday, so he came over to meet me there. I started talking to him. He walked up, and he's like, he looking at the Colt. He goes, "Those Libras." He goes, "I make those." I was like, "Yeah, this is an original set from, I think they're stamped like 73 or whatever." He's like, "Wow, that's really cool. What kind of car even is this?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's a Dodge Colt Mitsubishi Lancer." Give him the whole spiel, right? So he was cool. He was into the car, which I figured he owns VTO wheels. I better show up in a car with wheels that look like they belong there.
yeah,
So
exactly.
just a little bit of a, I don't know.
Good move.
Yeah, exactly. So then all of a sudden, like a 1985 Crown Victoria pulls up behind me. I was like, that's weird. I wonder if it's a friend of his or something. This young kid gets out, introduces himself to him, and it turns out he was also scheduled there for the same time to look at the car. I was like, huh. So now I'm like, I'm just going to kind of step back. I'm going to let the other guy do all the talking because he's going to ask bad questions that you shouldn't ask, and I'm going to get the answers to him anyway. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
He openly was asking questions that made no sense. No offense to him if he listens. He's young. He was probably, 24, 25. Didn't seem like he really had the money. Was kind of interested, kind of not interested. Seems like he's more of an American car guy normally. He's talking about his Jeep and his Crown Vic, and I can just picture this guy putting a V8 in this thing and cutting it up and ruining it. But anyway, so he's going over it and kind of looking at things, and I'm just walking around the car. I FaceTimed you just to kind of give you a look of what we were looking at while he was having his conversation with the guy. And the car was marketed for what, $3,000? I'm sure you don't mind. We don't talk. You don't care if we talk about what we paid for it.
No,
right?
whatever.
So the car was $3,000. And I hear the other guy talking. And he's like, "Well, I got to go home and I want to do a little more research." And he's like, "But would you take 25? And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah, probably." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he's like, "Well, I got to go." I was like, "All right." So the guy leaves. And I'm like, "All right." So he's like, "Well, it sounds like you're looking at it for somebody else." And I was like, "Yeah, pretty much." I was like, "But I have a friend on the East Coast who's big into these. He wants one. And, look at this car." I was like, "I heard that guy, offer you 25, but not seriously." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'll tell you what." I was like, "If you hold it for me until tomorrow and don't sell it to him, we'll give you 27 and we'll get it out of here tomorrow." And he goes, "Oh, all right." Sold. So it's that whole thing. Like you can't mess around with something like this. You just gotta buy it when you're ready to buy it, and that seemed to be the right move.
Yeah, it was way underpriced.
It's way underpriced. It's significantly underpriced. Even if it needs work, it's underpriced. So looking at the car, it has some cool parts on it. I don't want to take your story away, but I've seen the thing, so it's definitely lowered. It's definitely lowered. It's not like cut springs. It has proper springs in it.
Yep.
It has what looks like IPD sway bar in the front. It has Mikuni HSR flat side carbs. I'm not sure what size they are. I haven't figured that out yet. I assume they're either 40s or 45s. That's a very expensive upgrade. They're actually modified from a Harley-Davidson fitment. So they're a flat. They call it a slide carb. So instead of a butterfly, it's like almost like a elevator sliding door that opens.
Yeah.
But they are an upgrade, and a lot of rally guys use them. So that's cool. So that's, even if you don't wind up using them, you could make a good amount of money selling them. In fact, you could make almost half the purchase price of the car back in just selling these carbs if you wanted to run something else. So that's pretty cool. It had a set of Hella 500s already mounted in the front. They are a more modern set, so they don't have like chrome buckets or anything, but that's a good quality light. It had air horns, which we can make go away. It had a second air horn in the trunk, not wired up. That was the Luku Karacha air horn, which is awesome.
You should set that up in your garage.
I
Just hook
keep
up
meaning
a
to make
battery.
it run. Yeah, I just haven't done it yet. Couple of negatives. The car used to be a cream color. It's been repainted red. It was
Not
done
bad, though.
pretty thoroughly. There's a couple of spots that we can probably make better. There's a pretty significant run on the passenger side door and one on the driver's side quarter. Most people probably won't even notice it, but we can probably cut that run down with some sandpaper. It was painted very complete inside the door jambs, under the hood, inside the trunk. The only signs of the cream color coming through I can see that you'll ever even notice outside the car are around the rear window seal. Because it looks like maybe a window got put in after it was painted and it broke the seal on the paint. But we could put some either red paint around the edge again, or we actually take like a piece of black pinstripe tape and just run it thin around the edge and it would hide that completely.
Yeah.
So that's not too big of a deal. It's never going to be a show car quality paint job, but it's a very respectable driver, which is what you and I are into.
That's all I need it.
We don't need a show car. We just want something that looks decent. We can drive it without being embarrassing and enjoy it. So I think the biggest negative to the car is that the front seats are missing. It has, I shouldn't say missing. They've been changed out with some Pep Boys special racing buckets that aren't great.
It's unfortunate because I guess the factory seats are actually pretty nice to sit in.
Yeah, they look
but
pretty...
they're probably torn, and that's why somebody took them out. Like,
Well,
it seems very common in looking at 140 stuff, like the upholstery goes, but all that's available.
Yeah. So there's two good points there. One, a 240 seat, I think pretty much bolts in, and those
It depends
commonly available
on the year, I guess.
Okay.
It might not work in this early car. I can figure it out, though.
Either way, I think we can probably find a set of 140 seats because the Scion and Coupe are the same, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. So we didn't talk about it's a 1969. So it's the first year was 67. So this is the third year in. So it's the last year of the aluminum grill.
Yep, which is cool. It's the best looking grill on the car.
Yeah, it is. First year of the dual markers, right?
Yep.
Second year. Turn signal. Second year?
Yeah.
I guess it's got an alternator instead of a generator now.
It's the first year of the 2-liter because it was a 1.8 prior to that.
Yep.
And it's the first year of the alternator versus generator. So it's definitely the best year, clearly. It's a 4-speed car. It's a factory 4-speed car. It would have had twin. It's a 142S, which is cool because that means it has the twin SUs from the factory, which has now been upgraded with those twin Makunis. So it's like the hot rod version, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of negatives.
No, it's a cool car because in 1969 it came with 4-wheel disc brakes.
Yep.
And 3-point belts all around.
And it doesn't have a leaf spring rear axle either, which a lot of the other rear drive traditional cars of that era do. It's got like a
coil springs
with coil springs and like a 3-link.
Yeah.
There's a Panhard wire factory.
Oh, maybe not on this year, but some do have it. Maybe later ones do.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it. I haven't spent a ton of time under the car either. So the car has an interesting backstory. I haven't confirmed it all yet, but it looks like it might have started in San Francisco. And it wound up in Alaska, where thankfully Alaska doesn't use a lot of road salt because it was not a very rotted car.
It's got a few spots. What?
It's got a few spots of rust that they all do, but it's, again, if it's only driven in nice weather, it's never going to get worse than it is.
No.
And you can
In my
make
New
it-
England brain, I'm like, that's not that bad.
It's
If
a
you
mid-car.
show that car to someone in California, they're like, throw it in the junkyard.
Yeah,
Let it
absolutely.
rot it out.
Yeah. But it has the advantage of being a West Coast car, so not having all that East Coast rust, even with a little bit of rust.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the disadvantage of being a Phoenix car its whole life and having the interior just completely destroyed. The interior is pretty much intact. The dashboard has some cracks across the top, but you can just get a dash pad to cover that. But overall, the interior is pretty complete. We might wind up dyeing the door panels back to black. They should be, because somebody made them red at some point. But
Or I can swap with somebody or something. Or
sure, I think just some vinyl paint, make them black again, probably better, because it's like an aftermarket
Sure.
bright red. Doesn't really fit the car's aesthetic, but it looks to me like somebody was going for almost like that Club Racer vibe when they were building it.
sort of, except for the stick-on portholes.
It was an older gentleman who owned it. It looks like my assumption is that, so there's an old registration in the trunk, and it belonged to a man who's a pastor currently in Anchorage, Alaska. But he's pretty young, so my assumption is that he inherited the car from a father or something, because it has enough old manisms or older owner-isms, I guess, like the fake portholes in the fenders, which thankfully are just stuck on, or the fake vent in the bottom of the fender, or the La Cucaracha horn, or the bottle of Mexican Coca-Cola that matches the paint job of the car just sitting in the cup holder, or the cup holders themselves, which are a plastic tray that comes from like Pep Boys. It just has enough weird little odd vibe things that are easy enough to change. I mean, this car is just a set of wheels and a buffing compound away from being pretty rad looking. So, and honestly, even the wheels that are on it, the Steelies with all the hubcaps, are cool. So it has those cool Volvo mud flaps in the back that flap all over the place. It's got that cool Volvo, like, bent out the side weird exhaust. It's a cool car. It's really neat. It's got pop out rear windows. I guess the big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet is it doesn't currently run.
Yeah, it wants to.
It wants to run, yeah. But the rear carburetor is completely frozen, and when you push the throttle pedal down, the front carb opens and closes. The back carb doesn't move at all. It makes compression noises. I haven't run like a compression test. I did make sure it cranked over before we purchased it.
Yeah.
I didn't try to start it there, but I at least made sure it cranked over. And didn't sound like it was just a starter spinning through nothing. It sounded like it was a pa-pa-pa-pa-pa kind of sound to it. So
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, if I have already fallen in love with the car, but that's just what I do. So if you decide you don't want to ship it back east, we'll figure out something. I'll keep it here. It's fine.
No, I'm into it. I want it. It's
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I've been looking for one. It's something a little different than what I normally have.
Yep.
It's a little more classic. It's cool because it's technically a 60s car.
Yeah.
It also feels a little bit 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, right in the cusp
It doesn't
there.
look 60s, which is what's cool.
I think it doesn't look 60s though, only because it's basically the same shape as a 240 that went to 1993.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it doesn't look 60s. I think if it was on its own, existing in a world where the 240 did not exist, I think it looks pretty 60s. So, but I mean, I think it's cool. Somebody at one point put hood pins on it, which is another reason I think it has that whole,
Yeah.
club racer vibe.
A little bummer, but I was leaning into it.
It doesn't need them because the hood latch and cable work just fine. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. I was talking to you a little bit about it. And in my head, if it were my car, I was like, I would fill in the holes where the hood pins are. And then I would run like an angled nose stripe across it, like the Alpha guys do, in like a cream white.
Yeah, or I could just put pins and the cables in. That also doesn't look half bad.
or you could do both. Because I think that nose being a slightly different color would be really cool looking. But anyway, that's just my thought.
I'd probably do it with vinyl and not paint.
Well, whatever. We're filling in the hole is what I was thinking about. So you just paint it. But if you're going to do a vinyl, then possibly yes. Anyway, maybe we'll Photoshop up some renders and see what we can do here, because I think it would look cool.
Yeah. First, make it run.
First, get it running.
Make sure it's all right. I think it'll be all right. Those engines aren't known to be like super troublesome. It's funny. It feels like it's very British, like
These twin SUs and
like they copied the British playbook.
Yeah.
Because it's got the engine is entirely iron, even the head.
Yep.
And the twin SUs, it's very agricultural. Like it like, it looks like an MG if you are just looking under the hood.
Sure. Very simple car. I think one of the coolest things about it is the fact that I was thinking this the other day. Like, I'm going to feel really bad if the motor's bad because I suggested to buy the car. But then I was like, you know what? It's a Volvo. Like,
yeah,
that you could take a 2.3 out of a later 240 and put it in there and bolt on the same carbs and it would be fine. So it's not like you couldn't get an engine for it for like $300.
No. And I was reading about that earlier. It's not like it's a little bit involved of a swap, but it can be done if you've got a bad B20. You could just put a B230 in it. It's not a huge deal. It ends up being tilted over actually.
Okay.
Because it's taller.
Okay.
I guess, and you got to do a little modifications to make the later M47 transmission work. But it's not impossible.
If worst case scenario, you could probably buy a B20 for next to nothing from somebody as well. Like
you could rebuild one.
Is so strong, and you're into this car currently for like $2,800 because I wound up having him. The gentleman who was selling the car, I noticed he had a truck and trailer, and I actually after saying I'd come and get it, I asked him this. I was like, "Hey, if I gave you another $100, would you just bring it to my house? It's only 11 miles away." And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." Because I did the math in my head, and I was like, "I got to rent a pickup and a trailer, and my time. That's for the $100." So,
well, it's like we were talking about. It totally depends on the car, right? This didn't have that great of pictures. It had like 4 or 5 sentences,
right?
And the guy had it sold in like 3 days.
Yeah. Well, the only reason for that, though, Andrew, is because he was selling a car that people actually want. And he was selling it for a price that undercut the value of the car by somewhere between 30 and 50%. So the car not running makes it a little bit closer to the true value of the car. But
yeah,
I'm also less afraid of it at that money, because if this car was $6,000 or $7,000, I would have said no because I can't hear it run.
Oh no, nope.
But at $3,000, in worst case scenario, the car needs a motor. You're still into the car for $5,000. Like, it's not the end of the world. You're still into it for a great deal.
It's an actual desirable car.
You could change your mind tomorrow and get your $3,000 back without even blinking.
Yeah. So
from me directly.
So basically,
just cancel the check to cancel the check to pay.
We don't. We're running out of topics, so I just bought another project car instead.
That's why you did it. That's 100% it. You haven't been talking about this Volvo 142 for the past 5 years or anything. Nothing about that at all.
I don't know, it seems like a really cool little car. It's like I'm actually. It's funny. At first, you were trying to you were kind of telling me to fuel inject it. I was like, I kind of want to stick with carbs because I don't really care. I'm not going to drive it that much.
Yep.
And then you found out that the carbs that are on there are actually pretty cool. So I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, the setup looked janky at first, but apparently it's not.
It did. Yeah, apparently it's a thing.
Yeah.
Some Datsun guys are using them. MG guys, Moss Motors apparently sells them MGs now.
Yeah, apparently the throttle response is significantly better than with the SUs.
And even supposedly Webers, dual Webers. So
supposedly it's similar to the performance of a twin Weber setup with less fiddliness.
And it doesn't have the Weber sound, I guess.
Sure.
But it still has carbs.
Sound.
I don't know.
Yeah. Still has carbs sound.
I don't know. It's cool. I want to try it. A car with carbs like that.
Yeah, no, I'm way into it, and I think what's neat about it being a Volvo is we both have. I mean, listen, we grew up together, so that's probably a big part of the reason that our taste is so similar, right? But
Yeah.
we both have similar taste. We both love that B sedan era of SCCA and rally car racing,
Exactly.
and neither one of us wants to spend $25,000 on a 2002 or
Nope.
$65,000 on an Alpha. I mean,
What are even 510s now?
even a 510, you're not going to get one for less than 10 to 15 grand for a sedan. If you want a 2-door, even more in not perfect shape.
In the worse condition, probably, than what this car is, right?
The condition of your Volvo in a 4-door 510 would probably run about 10 or 11 grand.
Yeah.
And that's a non-running car that needs help. So
We talk about...
So we settled on Colts and we settled on Volvos.
Well, we talk about you should buy whatever you want, drive whatever you want.
Yeah.
But you don't have to buy the car that everybody else has.
No, in fact,
unless you're you and I, we buy the same cars. But
yeah, if the car you want is ever used in the automotive sphere where they say automotive lifestyle, you don't want it anyway. It's fine. That's my hatred of the day, by the way. Automotive lifestyle.
Yeah,
I'm just mad at it.
You know, these Volvos have race history.
100%.
They've won some races. They have a lot of rally history, which is cool in Europe. And it's just like, something on the outside. It's an outsider car, I guess.
One of my favorite Colt drivers got his start in Volvos. The Flying Sikh.
Oh.
Jodinger Singh. If you look at his early pre-Lancer stuff, he was driving a Volvo PV44 at the Safari Rally, which is the Volvo I want. So
those are also getting really expensive.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Yeah. I did joke that if that by having your car currently at my house, I now have 4 red German coupes. Because the Mercor is red, the 944 is red, this is red, and the German Eclipse is red. Yeah. Well, sorry, European, excuse me. 4 red European coupes. So I was like, I got this thing out of here. I can have 4 red coupes here. Jeez. In fact, I don't think my neighbors even realize it's a different car yet. So
yeah. We'll have to figure out. Well, like I said, you don't have to spend much time on it because it's not yours.
This is what I've been doing, and this is what I said I'd do when I first got it here. I'm going to try to get it running. The carbs are stuck. I was talking to a local friend here who's a Volvo nerd, and he knows about these carbs because he's a Volvo nerd / motorcycle guy. And he said that basically what happened was I tried to start it. The fuel pump is definitely working because when you turn it over, fuel gets to the carb, but then there's these overflow tubes that come out the bottom of them, and it just dumps fuel on the ground directly from those overflow tubes. And he said that's caused by a couple of things. One, there is a jet that gets clogged, like a main jet that gets clogged when they sit for a long time. Or 2, it's not opening at all, and it's just dumping the fuel instead of into the engine, into the overflow. It's almost, we joke about a carburetor operating like a toilet, right? It runs on a float bowl and vacuum. And so basically what happens is it has an overflow like a sink or a toilet where if the level gets up to a certain point, it dumps out the side and out these overflows instead of dumping into the engine or in the engine bay uncontrolled and causing a fire. So it's directly jumping out of those. And he said the case is either the jet or one of them is stuck. And I know the rear one is stuck. And the front one might also be stuck internally because it's also dumping fuel on the ground directly. So the fuel is not going from the carburetor float bowl into the engine. It's just literally dumping on the ground. So I'm going to pull the carbs off. They're actually super simple to take off because they're mounted like motorcycle carbs. So it's a aluminum plate adapter plate that's bolted to the factory twin SU manifold. And then on top of that plate, there's a rubber, I guess I don't know how to describe it, like rubber adapter that holds the base of the carb with a clamp, just like it would in a motorcycle. So you basically just take that clamp off and the carb comes off. Like it's very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if we do wind up keeping these carbs, we're going to have to build some kind of a bracket to hold them a little bit better. So I don't like them just kind of hanging there in the air.
Yeah, I got to look at like the pictures of apparently the guy in Canada that like set these up doesn't really sell the parts or won't actually follow through in the order or something.
Yeah, there's some whole story on the internet about this guy,
but you can like look at all the pictures are there, and people are like, you just look at the pictures, you can figure out how to set it up.
Yep.
And the same, you can look at the Moss Motors kit. You can kind of see those adapters they have, so that might be the way they're actually done.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same stuff.
And yeah, just do some figuring out and clean up of like the linkages and all that stuff.
Sure. I've played with some motorcycle carbs in the day, and they all it looks very similar to a motorcycle carb. So it is a motorcycle carb, but it was very familiar to be working on it. So,
and I was looking at like some different filters that'll fit better, stuff like that.
yeah, the filters that are on there seem fine. So it is what it is. One thing at a time.
Other than being really dirty.
Other than they are black, that's for sure. So yeah, I'd like to dig more into the history of the car. Like I said, at least we have the name of the previous owner, so you could reach out to him if you wanted to, and kind of just learn what happened and go from there.
The cool thing is that when you're looking up these cars, there's several like websites and companies that sell replacement parts for these early Volvos.
My mind.
Yeah,
coming from a world of Colts and even Corollas, where I have some parts options, but not very many. These are like, I mean, they're not to the level of a Mustang or a Camaro, but they're pretty close.
Yeah,
you can buy everything from seat covers to new suspension parts and for not a lot of money. They seem like a
I would say
pretty good choice of a car to restore.
Yeah, almost British car level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's very cool. Again, make me want one now.
Yeah, so it's cool. I didn't, once I saw your pictures, I was like, oh, it's definitely lowered. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's either IPD made the springs or this other company I was looking at has lowering springs.
Yeah, that
so
Canada
it'd be
guy
pretty interesting to
too.
know who.
That guy in Canada, John, whatever.
Yeah.
John V.
So it'd be pretty cool to figure out what are on there because they look pretty low.
I haven't jacked the car up yet. I'll do that later this week.
And see what kind of shocks are on there too, because you can get like Bilsteins for it.
I bounced all four corners of the car. It's pretty stiff, and the shocks are in great shape. So
yeah,
that's not something.
So right off the bat, like whatever car I bought, I was gonna, because they're not that expensive. The suspension stuff, I was like, oh, I'm gonna lower it, put sway bars on it.
Yeah,
I don't have to. I can just buy some wheels for it.
Already there.
It definitely needs tires.
Definitely needs tires. I was also looking at all the steering components. All the bushings are new too in the front.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they sell full bushing kits, but that's all good.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the only thing we have to check is like brakes and like fluid.
So the brakes work. I checked the oil. It looks clean. Coolant is green. It's got coolant in it. Those are the only fluids really. It's got a cable clutch, right? So
yeah, brake fluid is on the top.
Yeah, the brakes work. I rolled it off the trailer and it stopped the car. The e-brake kind of works.
All that stuff, they sell all that stuff too, which is cool.
Yeah, the e-brake works in my driveway, which is not much of an incline. But if I got behind it and pushed it, I can push through the e-brake. So the assembly works. It just needs to be adjusted. Yeah. So that's a positive thing. Again, there's so many positives with this car. Even the couple of rust spots and the couple of runs in the paint, like, it's not a big deal. This is it's a rad car.
It's neat because it's factory 15-inch wheels. So immediately the tire sizes is much more availability.
That's big for 1969.
Yeah.
For a small car. It's not a big car.
So yeah, no. And I was looking at for like $500 or something, you can get a set of the ATS Cup wheels for it, or the ATS Classics.
Yeah, those are cool. ATS Classics, the 5-spokes you showed me.
Yep. And you can get 185. The car's got 165 something tires on it now. You can get like 185s that'll go on those wheels.
Huh. Like 185, 55s probably.
Like 180, I think they're 185 70s or something like that.
No, I wouldn't. I don't think it'd be a 70. You'd probably want to go a little smaller.
65. They have a decent sidewall.
I think that you'd look at some online because you're going to want to make it look a little more racy. And I think a tire that tall will kind of defeat the purpose. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I was going to go with the Vertestein Classics.
Talk to Alex Stadel before you do.
Okay.
He has them on his RX-7 and he hates them.
Okay.
So,
because they have the right looking tread pattern for a 60s car.
Yep. Just talk to him about them.
Because they have other ones. They have like ones they advertise for their Porsches, which are a little more 80s looking tread pattern.
Yep. I think his biggest complaint is that for the money, they don't feel any different than a set of Chinese tires. That's what his statement pretty much was. I'm pretty sure we'll talk to him about it. I didn't put those words in his mouth. You'll have to talk to him. I remember not liking them.
Anyway, it's a super neat looking car.
Yep. Yeah, I'm into it. I dig it. And hey, it's temporarily giving me some project car updates, and then it will give you project car updates, and then it'll give you an excuse to come out here and fiddle with the car a little bit before we put it in a truck and send it that way. So, or maybe we get it running really good and just drive it home.
I don't know about that.
Get it running really good and I'll drive it home for you.
But yeah. I don't know. I don't have anything else to talk about.
No, it's a pretty big update, so we can leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, right? Be like, if you're not in a rush to find a car, just especially
wait.
if it's a car that's like your fifth car. Like I certainly didn't need this car,
right?
But it was like on the back burner of like, I'll just look for one casually.
When one popped up 10 minutes from me, it was like, well, we better look at this one.
Yeah, I think feels like a good car. It looks like a decent car.
Decent is a good word for it. If anybody who is familiar with my blue Colt, it reminds me of the condition of the blue Colt when I got it. Like, obviously has been loved, but just fell on some hard times and needs to be reloved again.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me. My mom's Beetle's a little bit nicer, but like
your mom's Beetle's definitely nicer.
Well, when you get underneath it, there's some edges like of the front and rear panels where you can tell it was like bumped into. This is before she had it.
Sure.
Like the rear panel by the exhaust is like a little bit rusty.
But there's no rot on her car.
There's no rot on it.
The previous owner of her car was an enthusiast that garaged it and went through a lot of things.
Yeah.
This car
Except
here,
for cleaning the underside.
Well,
full of Arizona dirt.
Dirt in Arizona, yeah. So this car here looks like it had that level of care, and then it was just kind of forgotten about for a while.
Yeah.
That seems to be where we're at. So it just kind of got forgotten, and now it's going to get back to its fighting weight again and be happy. So, happy little car.
Yeah.
Sticker
cool
idea.
Car.
Bob Ross kind of thing. Instead of happy little trees, or happy little cars.
Okay.
Trademark.
It's yeah. I'm into it. I wanted something that was a little more classic without being super expensive. So
no, this is the way to go.
This fulfills it.
Yeah, it does. It does. And like I said, if something came up tomorrow and you're like, man, I gotta get rid of this thing. I need the money back. We can get rid of this car in 24 to 48 hours. Easily. Probably within our community. Probably somebody in Discord would buy it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it would be me.
I'm not. Yeah. Apparently our scam here is getting people to listen to the podcast and then buy our cars.
Yes. Yeah. Every third one is free though. So don't forget that.
Yeah. That's this is not a Ponzi scheme. This is I don't know, get people to buy your old cars scheme.
Triangle tires scheme.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, Andrew, give the socials.
Yeah, follow us Odd Off Topic Podcast on Facebook, Odd Off Topic on Instagram. Brad is gonna post a picture of the Volvo on there after this episode drops.
As soon as it goes live, I'll take some.
But
I'll wash it and take some pictures.
If you come hang out in the Discord, there's already a bunch of pictures there.
There are quite a few actually.
So. Anyway, Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Racenanger. I'm on Threads, Racenanger. I probably won't have any pictures of it on my stuff until I go see it. But Brad, you can certainly share it to our podcast.
I'll share it to the podcast page,
feed.
and then you can share the podcast page to your stories or something.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yes. So follow me at TSISS350 on Instagram and all the Ottawa Traffic places he said. And of course, Scale Autocast and double, of course, Discord. So hit us up for a link to the Discord for some rousing conversation about Opel Mantas today and Volvo 140s and Dodge Colts and Isuzu Styluses. And
that's right.
Andrew's love of the Chevy El Camino.
No. I like Moon Eyes.
It's proven.
All right, cool. As always, keep cars analog and aim for the roses.